Chapter 4. Setting Sail. The next morning Telemachus rose with the first light. In the rosy dawn he dressed himself in his royal robe. He put on his sandals and strapped on his sword. When he looked in his dressing mirror, he was startled by his own appearance. He looked as handsome and powerful as a young god. Had Athena transformed him, he wondered, so he would shine before the others? He bade his servants assemble all the men of Ithaca, including all the suitors. Then, with a spear in his hand and 2 hounds at his side, he went to meet the crowd. As Telemachus moved through the throng of men, they all seemed to notice his changed appearance. Even the oldest among them made way for him. Telemachus took his place at his father's seat and looked about at all those who had come to hear his words. As he rose to speak, he could hardly contain his emotions. "You are demanding that my mother marry against her will," he said. "Day after day you gather at this estate. You slaughter my father's livestock and drink his wine. He's not here to defend his home. I shall never be as strong a man as he was, yet I cannot bear such treatment from you any longer. My father's house is falling into ruin." As Telemachus spoke, his newfound confidence began to fail him. I ask you to respect your consciences and fear the wrath of heaven," he said in a trembling voice. Then, overpowered by his feelings, he dashed his spear into the ground and burst into tears. From the looks on their faces, it seemed that some of the suitors had begun to feel true pity for Telemachus. The leader of the suitors, Antinous, stood up. "Blame your mother, Telemachus, not us," he said softly. "She deceived us. She said she could not choose a husband until she had woven a shroud for your grandfather, but every night she unraveled her day's work so the shroud would never be finished. For 3 years she lied to us in this way. You must force her now to choose one of us to marry. We will not leave until she does." Telemachus shook his head. "I cannot do as you say, Antinous," he said. "If you keep preying upon this house, I will ask Zeus for help, and all of you will die." As Telemachus spoke, a pair of eagles appeared overhead. Gliding on the currents of the wind, they circled the courtyard. Then they began furiously beating the air with their wings. They gave a death stare to those below. Then suddenly they turned on each other. They fought fiercely for a moment and then flew off into the sky. The men murmured with alarm, "What can this mean? What is Zeus telling us?" A wise old man stood up. He spoke in a shaky voice. "Men of Ithaca, I see an omen in the eagles," he said. "Zeus is telling us that Odysseus will not stay away much longer. Unless those who pursue his wife leave of their own accord, all our deaths are at hand. Let them be gone from this place before it is too late." But the suitors refused to heed the warning. "Go home, old man," one shouted. "Birds are always flying about. It means nothing. We shall stay here as long as we like. Odysseus is dead. We do not fear his son with his fine speeches." Telemachus shook his head. "The gods know my story," he said. "So here is what I propose to you. Give me a ship and a crew of 20, and I shall set out in search of my father. If I hear that he is alive, we will all wait patiently for his return. If I hear he is dead, we will have a funeral for him, and my mother will choose which one of you she will marry." But the suitors would not agree even to such a simple plan. Instead, they mocked Telemachus, saying he was not as strong enough to survive such a voyage. Then they returned to the halls of the palace to feast and drink while they waited for Penelope to make her choice. In despair, Telemachus walked down to the sea. He washed his hands in the foamy water and prayed to the goddess Athena for help. "I know you came to me yesterday and bade me to take a ship to search for my father," he said. "Tell me now what I should do. My mother's suitors scorn me, and now I fear no one in all of Ithaca will aid me in my quest." In a flash, Mentor was at his side. His gray eyes glinting, he spoke plainly. "Telemachus, you have shown this morning that you indeed have a bit of your father's strength and courage, so I will help you on your journey. Think no more of the wicked ones who stand in your way. Believe me, on their day, they will pay for their rude disrespect. Return home, pack wine and provisions for your voyage to Nestor's island of Pylos. I will find men to sail with you. I will find the best ship and launch it upon the sea." Telemachus thanked Mentor, and with great haste he returned alone to his father's estate. When he arrived there, he found the suitors slaughtering goats and pigs in the courtyard. They jeered at Telemachus as he passed by. "Boaster! Pretender!" Telemachus ignored them and went straight to the storeroom where Odysseus kept his gold and bronze, and his finest clothes and oils and wines. Day and night the storeroom was watched over by Telemachus' old nursemaid, Euryclea. Telemachus now sought help from Euryclea. He asked her to pour wine into kegs and barley meal into bags. "Keep these provisions hidden till nightfall," he told the old woman. "When it grows dark, I will collect them and take them to a ship that waits for me. I am sailing to Pylos tonight in search of news of my father. Promise not to tell my mother for at least 10 days. If she knows my plan, she will try to stop me." Euryclea cried out in distress, "Please, do not go, my boy. These wicked men will be angry when they learn you have left. They will find you and murder you." "No, I will be safe," Telemachus assured the old woman, "for this is the will of the goddess Athena. She is helping me." Indeed, even as Telemachus spoke to Euryclea, the gray-eyed goddess was moving quickly about the city. Disguised as Telemachus himself, she found 20 good men to row his ship to Pylos. When evening came and the streets were dark, Athena put a ship upon the sea and equipped it with all it needed for sailing. Then, disguised again as Mentor, she met the crew as they arrived at the dock. Mentor sent each man to work on the ship, then hurried to the house of Odysseus and put a spell of sleep upon all who were there, except Telemachus. Still in the guise of Mentor, Athena called to him from the great hall, "Your men and your ship are at the port. Let us go." Telemachus hurried after Mentor. When he came to the shore, he found the crew of 20 waiting for him. With dignity and calm, the son of Odysseus gave them their orders. "Make haste to my house. Wake not a soul. No one else knows of our plan. Bring our provisions down to the shore." Telemachus' crew quickly did as he ordered. Soon they were ready to cast off their anchor and set sail. Telemachus and Mentor took their seats in the stern of the vessel. From the bright gray eyes of the goddess came a western wind. It rippled over the sea. "Catch the ropes, hoist the sail," Telemachus called. The crew lifted the mast and hauled up a white sail. The wind blew full blast, and a dark wave sent the ship on its way. The men poured wine to honor the gods, most especially Athena, mighty daughter of Zeus. "Little do they know," thought Telemachus, "that the goddess herself sails with us tonight." Chapter 5, page 52, The Search. From dark till dawn, Telemachus' ship sped on its way toward King Nestor's island of Pylos. Just as the sun was rising above the sea, the ship reached its port. A great crowd was gathered on the beach. They were offering sacrifices to Poseidon, lord of the seas. The crew lowered their sail. Mentor ordered them to stay aboard, while he and Telemachus went ashore in search of King Nestor. As they walked together, Mentor offered advice to the young man. "Do not be shy before the king," he said. "Ask him for news of your father. Is he dead? And if so, where is he buried? Beg him to tell you the truth, for he is wise and powerful beyond all men." Telemachus drew back, afraid to approach such a great man. King Nestor had been a fearless warrior and sailor and a master horseman and a killer of giants. Most of all, he was known for his great wisdom and judgment. "Do not worry," said Mentor. "Heaven will prompt you. Believe me when I tell you that the gods have been with you since the moment of your birth." Hearing these words, Telemachus gathered his courage. When he and Mentor reached the crowd on the shore, they saw Nestor sitting with his 7 sons as the others prepared a great feast. 2 of Nestor's sons rushed forward to welcome the 2 strangers to their island. They invited them to sit on soft sheepskin. They served them meat on silver platters and wine in golden cups. When Mentor and Telemachus had finished eating and drinking, Nestor approached them. "Is it proper to ask questions of guests only after they have had their fill of food and wine?" he said. "It is proper. So, now that you have feasted with us, tell me, who are you? From what land have you sailed? Are you traders or pirates?" Mentor nodded to Telemachus, encouraging him to speak boldly. "We come from Ithaca, the island once ruled by the brave Odysseus," Telemachus said. "We come in search of news of him. We want to learn of his fate when he sailed for home after the Trojan War. Please tell us what you know. Do not soften the story. I must know the truth, for I am his son." Nestor gasped with astonishment. "I can hardly believe my eyes," the old man said. "But now that you tell me who you are, I see that you indeed look very like your father, Odysseus. I will tell you all I know of his journeys and adventures." When we set sail from Troy, Athena was angry with some of the Greeks for defiling her temple in the heat of battle. At her bidding, Zeus scattered our fleet and flung our ships far away from each other on the open seas. I finally found my way back home, but knew nothing of the fate of my comrades. I could not say who had been saved or who had been lost. All I knew of their fates is what I have since learned in the halls of my own palace. I am sorry, but no news of your father has ever come to me." Telemachus sighed with despair. Then he told his father's old friend about the suitors who had invaded his home and were stealing his father's provisions. Nestor was silent for a moment. He seemed deep in thought. Finally, he spoke in a soft, steady voice. "I will tell you what you should do now," he said. "Go to the palace of King Melanus and beautiful Queen Helen. Melanus was the last to survive home from the Trojan War. He has traveled to many lands. Beg him to tell you all he knows. He will not deceive you." Telemachus thanked Nestor for his counsel. Then Nestor invited Telemachus and Mentor to rest at his house for the night. "The son of mighty Odysseus and his friend need not sleep on the deck of a ship tonight," he said. Mentor stood up. "Thank you, but I fear I must return to our ship and take care of our crew. Telemachus will stay and sleep in your home. Please, lend him your swiftest horses and finest chariot, so that he might travel to the palace of Menelaus tomorrow." Then with these words, Athena suddenly took her leave, not as Mentor, but in the winged shape of a mighty eagle. All who saw the sight were struck dumb with amazement. Nestor grabbed Telemachus's hand. "My friend," he said, "you travel with the gods themselves. I believe your friend was in truth the gray-eyed daughter of Zeus." Nestor prayed to Athena and promised to sacrifice a prized heifer in her honor. Then the old man led Telemachus to a lofty room of his palace, where his servants had prepared a comfortable bed. Telemachus rose early the next morning. He was bathed and anointed with oil. Then, dressed in a fine tunic and cloak, he left the palace of King Nestor to begin his journey. Again, all who saw Telemachus were amazed, for he looked like a young god. Nestor ordered his swiftest horses be yoked to his finest chariot. He ordered his servants to pack provisions of meat, bread, and wine. Then he bade his youngest son to travel with Telemachus to the palace of King Menelaus. The two young men climbed into the chariot. Nestor's son took hold of the reins and snapped them sharply, and the team of horses galloped away. All day the horses sped like the wind over the plains. When the sun went down and darkness spread over the land, they rested. The next morning, as dawn showed her rosy fingers in the sky, the two young men yoked the horses again and flew through the fields of wheat and corn. Again, the swift horses galloped all day. At nightfall, they came to a palace deep in the valley, the home of King Menelaus and the beautiful Queen Helen. Okay, that was the end of chapter 5 and page 63.